Greetings and welcome back. Welcome to our story of Kuroi-Ran and the final episode. We are here in mid-conquest or mid-finalization of everything. There are still some looters, there are some enemies in certain camps that have kind of survived in the space, and we haven't finished wrapping up this clearing. And at this point in our game, this is our final episode, and in this episode, we'll wrap up the storyline, we will finalize what happened throughout, we'll tie in all of the details of the story as they've kind of come and gone, and talk about the fate of Kuroi and Ako, and the whole of Japan in this time frame as well, as their story is tied to what's been happening around the area in Japan, and we'll get that story finalized and wrapped up. Let's free you. On her journey throughout, we're going to finish up all of the different spaces that we have enemies left over. We want to have this entire valley free. The efforts that Ako and Kuroi have been putting into this have led to a more peaceful valley, a collection of individuals who are joining together, and an entertaining group of people who will ultimately become a part of this valley. People who have had a place in the story of Japan's future, but are in the background, and will simply enjoy a restful finishing of their lives in a place where they can be unknown and free from peering eyes. So as we wrap up our spring, we are in the spring of 1582, and this is going to be the end for the Koiki. It is the end for really any hope of rising against Oda Nobunaga's forces, and this will mark the final strides of Oda Nobunaga's quest to unify Japan under his rule, and he will be successful in one season, and that will be bringing sad news to us in that time. For us, this place, we come to this place because of all the things that need to be righted in the valley, of all the things that need to be fixed here. He is one. Oh, somebody of importance, a humble refugee. Greetings, yes. And we're learning about him. We have found out about this individual constantly. And we know and have heard from enough people that he rules in an unkind way. He is nothing more than a ruthless leader looking to profit off of his people with no question of their health and wellness. So he will ultimately fall, and he will be one of the targets that we'll have before the end. Now, we haven't 100%ed our entire campaign yet, and that's something worth doing. We'll finish that up here. We have to free Andong. We know that he is somewhere within the village. We haven't actually done this quest line. From all of what we could have done, we have never actually talked with him. From Josen, well, let's learn about mining and metalwork. Although, I think we've done okay at this point, and we've probably learned plenty. We have people in the village who have been exceptional for that. And I suppose I do have a pickaxe still. Yeah, we could easily mine, but I'm pretty confident that... Oh, thank you, yeah. That's excellent. Thank you, buddy. Let's just buy the 15 and move on. We have been an expert of trade. The storyline started out with Kuroi as an expert merchant. Now, we are, friend. Alrighty, and then we just need iron shovels and iron pickaxes. We can do that. We also do have a raid up and coming, and with all of the banditry in the area, we have slowly but surely taken that down and gotten ourselves to a point where bandits are only loose collections of individuals. All of the camps have been cleared, and we are wrapping up our unification of the valley so that we can have a peaceful place here, and that our people can be safe in the Nata Valley. and that the Iko-Iki, the ideals of the Iko-Iki, can live on quietly in their own space. I do love the additions of these tents. They look nice. There we are. And there we have it. Nothing quite like taking them and finishing nice solid blocks to get them down. Alright, let's get what we can get out of here and head on. Clearing out this area, this will be our final task for this season. And I've put ourselves right at the edge of the season so we can easily transition into summer and wrap up the full story. And as we go around, as we finish up this liberation and freeing ourselves from the enemies from the camps from before, let us bring back some of the storyline, and then I'll wrap up all of the story ideas, bring the history together of what we saw in the storyline, what we saw for her, and then once we get to summer, we'll wrap it all up together. And I'll let you know that in order to make this all kind of pan out nicely, and we'll come back for them, I have rolled dice because I am a fan of tabletop games. I'm a fan of D&D and games like that, games of chance. And I did some dice rolling to decide what kind of fates would happen and what kind of randomized outcomes could I get, since we're here at the end and I want to wrap this storyline up to allow other projects to take over, and because I feel like the story deserves to be wrapped up. It should be allowed to finish and move forward. And so the rolls turned out well for Ako and her needing to go and interact with her people from the past. She feels a calling this spring because of Oda Nobunaga's progress and hearing rumors and still getting information from the people around her. She is still a shinobi, even if retired, and she will never forget her role, and she will never forget her service to her province in Japan. And knowing that Oda is on the march and trying to wrap up his conquest, she feels stirred to become active again. Even though she is at this point an older woman, it's still in her nature and in her blood to continue. For Ako's story, she came from a background with nothing. She was raised off the street, she was an urchin, and it was a ninja school in Omi province that took her in and gave her a place to belong. She performed simple duties for them, had a place, had a home, was an incredible listener and a great resource gatherer, and very clever young child. And through time, it was clear that she had a gift for speaking and getting people to share what they know. So she was brought in rather quickly into the fold and trained in the way of the shinobi. Never one to be great with weapons. It was not her forte. She was never as skilled with weapons and was a little sheepish with it, even clumsy at times with what she was trying to do. So she was kept away from anything involving combat. But when it came to words, she was always sharp as could be. Now, Ako came into Kuroi-Ran's life later in her life, into her adolescence, when her father was continually attempting to find ways to employ her as a showpiece, and Kuroi was growing more and more jaded and angry in her time. Frustrated with her fate, frustrated with what she sees happening around her, constantly trying to find ways to break free from the mold, but struggling because being a young adolescent woman with a father whose only interest was drinking and making money. Her father was a merchant, but not just any merchant. He was a merchant that capitalized off of others' loss. He would take from battlefields or steal from people and then deal with bandits and trade with the less savory people and gain what was to him free goods and sell them at maximum profit, because once you simply gain something that wasn't yours before, it's all profit at that point. He had a secret storeroom full of wonderful treasures that he told Kuroi she was never to see. She would always sneak in and get. Samurai swords from warriors, even one at one point famous sword from a samurai, but nothing that ever lasted long enough, and something that she never is able to take or keep. It ended up traveling back to its owner, or at least back to the owner's family. Not by choice on his part, by choice on Akko's part. There we go. Now let's get you all set. I tell you what, as a gamer, as a player, I've come a long way too with being able to block and actually defend myself. Because earlier on, I think you recall, I was not as good at the blocks and not as good at the wrapping up of attacks. Oops, that was awful. There we go. That's not going to go well for you. There we are. So as Kuroi was young, she was raised by her father, or at least as best as he could raise her. The game gets a little sluggish now with how many things there are to calculate and how many things there are to go through with with this part of the game, with the bringing all the resources in and choosing the needs. It's a poor thing chugs along. So I need to pause it before we get to that. Anyway, so as a young woman, she's raised by her father. Big quote marks on that one. Raised by her father was simply, she had a place to be. And he was there. But nothing more. Little more. So, she, in due time, would meet Akko as her missing auntie. And for her father's part, his recollection of his family was not that strong. But any offer to help was always welcome. Especially with a young, spirited child who would seldom listen to exactly what she was told and needed to be obedient and present for her father's shop in order to make it a good profit venture. So Akko showed up late adolescence, early into... Oh, that's gonna be bad. We probably need some stamina, right? There we go. It's good to have good armor. And for the part on here where we look at her combat and how she's doing in this is all of the training that came in with Akko's help. She would have started out taking swords from the back storage area that she was never to take, and messing with them and playing with them, but trying to figure out exactly how they work and how to be skilled with them after hearing stories of samurai and also, of course, seeing the people that her father interacted with. Some of them skilled warriors, others not. Knowing them and knowing that they were at least somewhat skilled individuals, this inspired her to ask questions about why do I not hear of female warriors? Why do I not hear of samurai who are women? And of course, that would be met with laughter, which would spur her on further to demand that there should be more. We're going to be wise in our strategies here. I don't think we're going to continue in this process without trying to get some healing. Yeah, let's make sure we actually keep ourselves alive. There we are. A little bit of healing. We're getting somewhere. Oh dear, I'm really just trying to get to this one. So, in her time, and in her training, there we go, she would have practiced with samurai swords. Of course, she would have been more drawn to the katana because it was showy and it gave her that feeling of doing what she was told that she couldn't, showing success in something that she shouldn't be able to be good at, but knowing that she can be good at it. And through time, Akko would become more present in her life. And for the roll, I did a random roll as well to decide how much does Akko feel her shame and want to continue to hold her secrets from Kuroi-Ran, or how much does she wish to share details of who she is, what her past is. And I ended up rolling very high on that one, so we're going to end up having her share her entire story. There we are. And the one thing I did roll low on was what happens with Kuroi? What is her final fate? Like, where does she go with her life? Does she go more lone, or does she go more of the family route? And so I end up rolling very low on that one. So it's going to turn out that she ends up being more of a solitary person over time, that all of the trials, tribulations, and her experience being held in as a young woman and having to fight through surviving her father's efforts to raise her and seeing all of the corruption around her have led her to find a more spiritual pathway, but one that is going to be isolating. That was an interesting jump, wasn't it? Yeah, you poor thing. So let's get these people eliminated one by one, and then we'll do a tour, and in the tour we'll wrap the storyline up. Ow. The Tanto would have been one of her favorite weapons, although mostly because of Akko. Akko would have very much emphasized having a weapon that could be easily hidden, something that's not as showy. There's a time and a place for a showy weapon. But there's also an importance to be had in a weapon that can be hidden away from sight and become deadly in a moment. And when it comes down to it, what's more important, being showy or being able to win the fight? And of course, winning the fight is by far the most important. Surviving is key, especially in a world that's driven to hold you down. Alright, part of this too is we want to wrap up this whole clearing of the camps. Now I left a lot of thugs here, so there were a lot of thugs to take down. Alrighty, only 2 shovels. Well, then I'm going to need to come back for more. Oops. All 4 of these. Let's see how many we can fit. And these projects are enjoyable, and I will show you that I ended up taking one of our build sites, and our final village is in one of these build sites. And I'm looking forward to it now. Now that it's almost nighttime, which I find to be the most gorgeous of times, which is what I want to show. I want to show the villages at nighttime. I want to do that first, and then we'll do a springtime tour in the light, because the trees are also gorgeous. And in that, we'll wrap up the storyline. In the evening, in her travels, coming back here to work with Andong, here are the tools. You go to the merchant, and we try to... Let's see here. I think we're going to ask him to stay. We know that there's loss, and we know that his pathway and her pathway are not too different, where his original lover is no longer where she was, and there's no way that he'll end up finding her. I love that they give you craftsman experience now with that one, so that's pretty cool. And as far as legend is concerned, we've maxed out our skills. We're doing great here. We came back here in the night to deal with Andong, as we don't want to draw attention to the headman. We don't want him to get in further trouble. We don't need to raise suspicion, because at this point, we have a plan for him, and it won't go well for him. But the people here deserve to be free. Andong will choose to be here and buy his freedom, and our guarantee for him is that he won't need to pay much for the freedom. And the final thug. Done. And then we can wrap this completely up with 2 more shovels, and we'll finish up this project. I also brought one of our fast travels with us so we'd have it. With that, it is a rainy evening, but an evening nonetheless. Let us go on a tour. In the night, we'll see the village. I love the lanterns in the night. And as you can see, expanded the villages here, what started as our first settlement. And this was the very first place we settled. And the goal was to have 2 villages that were side by side that would ultimately become a large city over time. This is the farmland. What used to be just our open fields has now gotten a shrine to Inari. And in this, it brings part of our story to this, which is that Kuroi-Ran, despite having the opportunity to meet a number of people over time, despite being a lovely young lady and a lovely woman at this point, and a very capable person, she's going to choose that her hands, her mind, and her spirit is devoted to the Kame and devoted to the world itself, and to try to bring spirituality back to the people and get them reconnected with who they are. And that the schism that they're experiencing in Japan is more representative of something that's at a deeper level that needs to be righted by getting back to the spirits that guide them. You'll note that there are still some places that haven't been fully fleshed out. I do mean to finish the road up to here and to wrap it around into this region here. And this was everything for us. Next step would be to put walls around it, of course, and to really finalize it. But I do want to have the storyline actually wrap up and have the road continue there as well. I think that's another small addition to think about. But let's walk through. What started here, this is our very first building just behind here. That general storage and this home is where it all began. And then everything expanded outwards from there. I've since changed it so that our fields are more focused in this area. We've put up retaining walls to hold in what we're expanding out. We've gouged out the soil to create paddies in this area and turn this into our fertile area for rice making. And this is, of course, our area of composting, a good ways away from the village and also a distance from the other. And in time, that part of the village will be rethought and redone to be just a pathway between. But for now, it's what the people need. It's what we as a peasantry need. And in all of her time, she focuses her intentions on the peasantry. Everything in her villages is devoted to taking on people who have no home, people who have been forgotten, or who have been displaced by greedy rulers and greedy, ambitious generals, daimyos, who have attempted to take what they can get and disregard the needs of the people. There we are. Forgot a couple lanterns. And her fate is that of the priestess. And this will be the space that she spends the most of her time. Here in Kaiho, where she works as a priestess, helping people to cleanse themselves of the burdens around them, helping to bring in those refugees who show up who need a place to be, a place to stay, and bringing them a safe space, food, and to be cleaned so that they do not have risk of disease or any of the other burdens that carried from where they were before. And in Kaiho, she will continue to live here in this house, right on the edge here, right in the center of town, near the paper maker, which was a big part of her past when she was in the Kaga province, and a big part of how we've chosen to make money going forwards here. We've become a useful part of this place. Now these large homes are solely for those who have no place. So you notice we have the beggars' huts set up over here. These homes are for our beggars who come through, our refugees who need a space. All of the people who come through will have a home in this one until they can find a space here in the village to do their part. And this is our Zen rock garden, built to allow people to consider the path, where you start and where you end. And as you walk it, you think of where you are and where you wish to be. And you walk the stones to know and to learn and to gain insight into where and what steps are next. And it's discontinuous because not all pathways lead back to where they started, and that is okay. And for Kuroi, it truly is a pathway that does not lead back to where it started. I think we need to finish this roadway here, don't we? There we are. As we walk down, this is what the village will stay as. There's definitely a lot more space for decorations, and I know that there are people out there who will do an exceptional job in their villages. I've decided that I could spend days and days, hours and hours continually adding to this, but at this point I feel like the storyline is more important just to wrap up. This is the main village, and I do love, if you haven't already done this, make sure you change the symbols for your villages and you just go under it by editing and go next or back, and that allows you to change the symbols for them. I find that that helps a lot with your organization. It also makes it feel a little more lively. Alrighty. Now, we haven't done much with Yutaki. Or Yutaka, my apologies. Yutaka has unfortunately been left as a mining camp, and that is the extent of it. It is the source of our iron, it is the source of our iron sands, it is what brings resources in. The people who work here are a proud group who know that they supply the entirety of our community with what we need. And there's nothing but potential going from here. I was originally planning on building a village next to a village, and you can see some of the structures that were there. But I didn't want to miss an opportunity here. The negotiator. Here. Let's, what can we sell to you? Go ahead and have that. That gives us a good amount of cash. It looks like we're going to need some more coins, so I'll come back to this friend of ours and pay them off in a moment. In Kagaiki, this is our final village, and where Kuroi makes her home. Her background as a merchant, what she did learn from her father was how to be a savvy business person, whether it be by his error or by his savvy understandings from time to time. Her emphasis on the mercantile side of things constantly allowed her to better her villages, improve the lot of life for her people. We have found that since in Yutaka, a fire had happened in our forge at one point, which was devastating. Luckily, no one was in it. We had since decided that it is worth the risk to build it right over the water, and that way, if anything were to go wrong, we can always let the structure fall. Into the water we'll go, and we'll be safe. But the structure itself will have to be rebuilt. We wanted to honor Ryujin, and our small mining camp that allows us to get iron sands out of a lot of the iron, or the sands of this area, is extensive and allows us to bring resources between these two areas. And this village has a construction and industrial crafting area, and then our tavern, of course, that brings us all together, and our shrine. Blessings of Ibishu to our merchants and to our center, and homes along the area, and a nice walkway that leads us in to the fishing camp. And only one building out by the sea, only one exposed to the wrath of the sea, since we know storms can come and storms can devastate our area. So the majority were built in this side to allow them to be insulated and protected, so that if our building out by the coastline was to be broken, we can still get back out on it. The lagoon is a good defense and a good structure to help save us. In this, there's room for more decorations, of course. I've obviously left a lot of places for that. And of course our tavern, the center of the village, to bring a communal space to be, a spot to share stories and information and to stay together. And I still have to finish my final statue here, don't I? Perfect, there we are. And a lighthouse to guide those away from this area, and to help our fishermen know how to navigate home if they somehow get stuck in the late night. Then the pathway, and this pathway leads up to our shrine, to Jizo, the guide of orphans, the guide of those who are forgotten, and that'll hold a special meaning soon. And as we walk up this pathway, we'll come to our quiet hermitage, our quiet, safe space away from the world. In that role, deciding that we would go to the quiet life, Kuroi has worked hard to make this her home, her garden, and her space. And that her emphasis is that the people know how to guide themselves. The people know how to make things best for themselves. Her weapons retired here with her, and her space is built for her to enjoy and to be at peace. And to find the time to meditate and go back to that state of peace. And of course, as Ako would have insisted, Amaterasu is the guiding kame of Kuroi-Ran. She had hoped for her to strive into greatness and to have a place of great import and great power. We had met in our travels, the Onibaba, as you can see the quest line here, which, by the way, the flyover doesn't work anymore, just so you know. You can't do the flyover challenge, or as you can't wait to do the quest and then have your character do the fly through. It just does a generic cutscene now and just shows a seasonal change and goes over all the villages, which is fine, but I miss what you could have done before with it, where before you did this flyover and your character would just sit at where they were and you would do this flyover of all the villages, and if you built on the map, you would see it. Unfortunately, that's been taken out of the game, regrettably, but I can understand performance-wise why it was. And that is her solitary home, and the space that she always gets to come down from and visit into the places and the people of the Nata Valley. And with that, we'll do our tour in the daytime as well. And we'll pay off our individual here, tribute is paid, and revenge will be found. So as much as they will head off and not cause us any trouble, we'll have that money back. We have people in this valley who do work for us, and we've started to sway those who used to be bandits to our side. It is no longer a place that we need to feel unsafe. If anything, it is now a place where the banditry needs to feel unsafe. We'll start in Kaiho, because I think the trees here are gorgeous, and they do a great job of popping this time of year. And there we are, moving through in spring. This is the area I just want to show in the daytime. And then it's time for us to wrap our story up. And in that, we'll need to advance into summer, because it is the summer of 1582 where all of the things come to pass. Ako at this point has chosen to leave a note for Kuroi, saying that she was called back to the service of the people who helped make her who she are. That the ninja and the shinobi of the Omi province have asked for assistance. There's a lot going on, and things are moving fast, and that they're asking for her help, because it is one of those times where they need everyone. And even though Ako is an old woman at this point, she is also an old woman, and it's easy to mistake the power that a person has when all people see is the surface, and an old woman is easily hidden in a crowd. So she will go and she will take part in some of this, leaving Kuroi in her thoughts and in her spaces, and also in some of her impulsivity and her anger that hasn't been fully subsided yet. She has a visit to Iwasaki that is going to be very beneficial to the valley, but will of course throw things into a little bit of disarray. And there we have it. Really, the trees in our area in Kaiho are the best. Now, let's advance to the next season and wrap this up. And upon the change in seasons, we find ourselves in the summer, and we find ourselves very specifically in the summer of 1582. And this is when Oda Nobunaga has finally finished his conquest. And at this point, where we'll meet the story and where we'll summarize up to is that he has already conquered, he has already traveled, and at this point he has already been to the temple of Honnoji, and at this point, oops, my apologies, he's already traveled to the temple of Honnoji. We have, in our area, heard the rumors, we know of what is happening, and at this point we're aware that monks are being hunted down in all over the regions of Japan, and that it is not a good time to be somebody who's associated with the Ikoiki and the peasant uprisings and the peasant kingdom. And that this is stoking a lot of fear in our people, but security in the sense that we already know that we're safe here. We're a quiet space, we're away from a lot, and we are going to be hopeful that we can remain quietly in our space and avoid the worst of the things that are going on around us. But as the rain falls and sets the mood a little lower, we're still reminded that even in times of fear, there is always more that is underneath the surface. And there are great beginnings that we can have. We need some food. So let us take a moment and actually get us something decent to eat. And we'll wrap up our storyline with this. It is going to be time today for Kuroi-Ran to pay off these raiders and to finalize the issues with them. This region can no longer be out of control. Ako has traveled, and she has not said where she would be. It would not be safe for anyone here to know, and she apologized to Kuroi-Ran. And, as I said, I had rolled high for her, meaning that her willingness to share her story is high, and is going to be a part of when she returns after her mission. She has mentioned that she wants to do her best to secure the foothold here, and said that there will be friends that will travel into this region to join Kuroi-Ran, and assist in the area. And that these people have always been loyal to the people they've served, but now that the people they've served are without direction, without masters, and it is looking that Akachi Mitsuhide is going to take over, has betrayed Nobunaga, and attempted to cut him down in the temple of Kunoji. Although he commits seppuku when it is clear that he and his retainers cannot survive the onslaught. Akashi Mitsuhide is going to have a short reign. And in this portion of our storyline, we're at the portion where there's uncertainty in Japan, and this is where we're going to take full advantage of the deep confusion, and full advantage of the fact that the Nata Valley is far from a lot of this conflict. It was brought into this conflict a long while back, when the monks were taken down, when the Ikoiki rebellion was quashed by Oda Nobunaga so long ago. And since that time, it's been rather forgotten. It has been solved in many people's eyes that this area is no longer an issue. And so that can be. It doesn't need to look like it's an issue. And Kuroi-Ran and Ako are going to do their best to ensure that. The area will be quiet, peaceful, and a source of travel for those who are looking for guidance in spirituality, but not so much so that they speak of, we don't want to emphasize it to the point where we get the lens of this is another monk rebellion and we need to make sure that it doesn't get anywhere. So we'll temper our spaces quietly, a place of simple villagers who are just are living and dealing with their own issues, with no lord who's ambitious enough to try to rise. So, in our wanderings here, and we'll go back to Iwasaki, we're going to find ourselves wandering quite a while. And we're going to just travel through the woods, by the river, meditating on the flow of the world, and where things need to travel, so that our future can be secure. And one of those things that needs to happen is there is an ambitious little man here who holds a lot of power and who owns a slave camp, and that's not something that's going to continue. It is something that we can't allow to continue, because his loud mouth and his efforts here could bring the attention of people we don't want in the area. We don't want there to be any reason why he would speak of what's been going on. He has been aware of the rapid expansion of Kuroi and her small villages, towns that have become something more than what they were. Her trading miniature empire and her efforts to help out refugees. We want that to be the focus. So, in this little village, and a friend of Akko's will travel into town, someone who trained her years and years ago, with the help of others. There will be a home here for a lot of those who served under the lords and walked in the shadows and carried information and short blades as their means of causing change, who held loyal to those who they had pledged an oath to, and who now have no one to pledge an oath to. They will pledge an oath to keeping the people of this place safe, and use their skills here. With the help of our ninja, with the help of our friends. There will be a mansion here that will be quietly devoted to people, not a person. And, for one final time, Kuroi will don her armor. The ninja will help and make sure that his wife is brought away from this space and isn't needing to be a part of this. But this will be his last time exploiting people. Having given him the opportunity to change his ways and make better choices, his words were clear. That she is nothing before him and that he can easily take any woman down who pretends to be a warrior. The fight was short, the cuts were deep. Now the village is free, and with the help of the newfound residents in this region, we will have peace and tranquility in this area in time. The people of the village will be given the option to stay, to go, and if they have worked in this village in any capacity, a home within this space is theirs to choose, and that it can be given up to a council that will then work on deciding who is to get to which house, what jobs you wish to take over, because it is now a village that needs to feed itself and run itself, and is free to take this clutter and turn it into a village rather than an industrial complex. And in this, the people will have the freedom to choose and have the right to make those choices without somebody imposing on them. There will be a particular pair of Akko's former co-workers, we'll say, who will oversee this operation and be sure that things are progressing the correct way. This is an expansive village with a lot to offer, and all of these people can make this village a wonderful place to be. And as the sky rains down, their tears of joy will, of course, be welcomed with regret, losses in the past, and having to confront what they have had to endure through these years, and then having to decide how to live that forward, how to bring things forward, or how to let these things go and allow themselves to live a life that is free from the past. And in our return to Kagaiki, the rain has stopped falling, and it's interesting. It's perfect timing too. I love that all of these things kind of worked out well. I didn't happen to wait for the rain to stop. It just stopped at this moment. Anyway, this is the moment where Kuroi is going to talk to our tribute collector, and she's going to hand him the samurai armor that she has been using this whole time to liberate this region. When he tries to extort, when he sees this armor and it's handed directly to him, and she says, "I won't need this anymore. This place is safe." The look that she'll peer deep into his eyes, he will see, and the depth of fear he'll feel will lead him to going back to his people, saying, and dropping the armor, and saying, You have nothing more to worry from us. And in this, the Nata Valley has been delivered into peace. The retired ninja and shinobi of the area who need a safe place to reside to avoid the eyes of Akechi and his agents, who are at this time traveling across Japan, taking down monks who were at all involved in uprisings. Anyone who's been involved in any opponent of his, or his reign as he sees it, will be hunted down, and these people will be safe here. Quiet peasants, nothing more. Merchants, fishermen, people who work in trades. They are nothing more than just simple people. At least here they are. And here they'll remain hidden, but also keep an ever-watchful eye so that the people of this region are safe. Now, as we go further into the summer, we'll go through this and I'll just finalize the story in this and just be done with it. We won't spend any more time doing maintenance or things like that. We'll just allow the story to end and be what it is. When Akko returns later in the summer, and we'll say that time has passed and it is late summer, and we are now in the point where Akechi Mitsuhide has himself been taken down by Oda Nobunaga's closest and most interesting general, Hideyoshi. Hideyoshi has an interesting story too. Having come from peasantry, a simple person carrying around the shoes of Oda Nobunaga from the start, has risen to a point where he is to become, and in the discussion of who is to become the heir, he cleverly gets in a position where he puts the youngest heir in charge, leading to his ultimate control over Japan. And it will come with benefits to Japan, but it does represent Oda Nobunaga's legacy continuing. He will also close off any gateway anyone else had to rising from peasantry and becoming more than what they are, which is exactly what he did in his entire life path. Ultimately, this will be a disgraceful moment for Kuroi to see, and she will retire into her meditations and bringing about peace again, letting her anger go, letting herself understand that it is okay to settle into a simple life and to become a priestess and just live out her life as a manager of this area, as a merchant, as a priestess, as somebody who helps those in need to get what they need. It can be just that simple. It can be good enough that way. The Nata Valley will enjoy years of quiet, peace, and of simplicity. The eyes of Hideyoshi will come to this place. They will count the rice. They will force people into their castes. Those who at one point in time may have been samurai or ninja who needed a place to reside and hide away will simply be peasants, and they will be attached to their farms in this area. They'll be attached to their fishing stations in this area. They'll be attached to their artisanships in this area. And in that is a peaceful way to wrap up their time and a quiet way to welcome a simpler life, a life of service after a life of constant turmoil. Akko, since I had rolled high for her and sharing her story, will reveal the shame that she feels and needs to share her story with Kuroi and let her know that it was hard for her to admit and she never wanted to say, but she is Kuroi's mother, who long ago had been exploited by a man and had been young and foolish in her choices and had become pregnant and didn't know what to do with the pregnancy, didn't know what to do with the child, thought of herself as not capable as a mother, and thought of herself as dangerous for this young child, and had given this young child, her daughter, her only daughter, to a temple to be raised so that she wouldn't live the same life as Akko did, so that she would have a family in the temple that would allow her to have a life and have a place and not grow up on the street and desperately try to cling to whatever she could just to get by, and then have to find any scrap that she could to get by until someone finally saw her and gave her something good. She knew of a person in the temple, a number of monks who would be willing to help her out. Kuroi's life has never been simple because the monks that she went to lived in Kaga province, and the Kaga province was one of the earlier places that Oda Nobunaga needed to secure. And in that, Kuroi was brought south back to Mino, where Akko was born. And in that, Akko had run into her yet again, and she needed to go to another space, somewhere away from the temple. She ended up in the hands of a easily manipulated man who was to be called her father, a merchant who had a decent staple and was easily controlled and monitored by the ninja and the temple. and who wanted to continue to keep her connected to the temple in the sense that he needed to have good appearances. Otherwise, his business would fail. He owed people things. And so he did his best, which is to say nothing, and simply had her exist there, kept her fed, kept her under shelter. That's about it. And then used her as a way to sell, just have her work in the shop, make sure that people see that she is pretty and has a cute smile, and that she can be a worker that serves him in his monetary ventures. In this, she learned her skills we'd already talked about before. Ako will shed a lot of tears, saying that she wished she was a better mother and that she apologizes for leaving her behind. It was never her intention to leave her behind, but knowing who she was and what she had dealt with in her life, she could never have been the mother that she needed. And this will initially come to Kuroi through anger, through tears, through frustration, knowing that if you always had the chance to keep me safe, why did you not? But the years spent fighting, the years spent having to be more than who she is, have conditioned Kuroi. She's lived a better life than Ako ever has. She's had the ability to choose more than Ako ever had. And even if she was still anti, which allowed her to not feel as shameful, she didn't have to admit, I'm your mother and I failed you and here I am. She was able to still serve and be a part of her life. But she didn't want that secret to go to her grave. And she wanted to at least say it. She won't beg for forgiveness, and she never does say, I'm asking for your forgiveness. She says, I know I've done wrong, and in that I will leave that fate to you. Kuroi, for her part, will have forgiven her, understanding, and having taken the path of enlightenment, known that there are many paths that lead to a good future. There are many paths that lead to nirvana. There are many paths that lead to enlightenment, and Ako's happened to be ugly, her choices not the best, but they're still choices, and she still made them, and they did result in a life that worked out well for the Nata Valley, fairly well for Kuroi. She has become more than what she was, and in that there's some thanks to be had. It is years later, trees have grown, our world has become peaceful and busy in its own right. Kuroi has continuously been a source of wisdom and guidance for people. Villages have thrived as best they can. Japan is in a challenging time, but the people in the Nata Valley enjoy a peace that they haven't seen in a long while. Ako has passed away years ago. In the final years, they had reconvened and had time together, and in some of that, healing has been done, and in some of that, frustrations have been communicated, but also new beginnings have been given, and choices and life paths have been talked about, and peace has been restored between them. Ako passed away, and in that time, Kuroi found a quiet place for her body to rest, and a nice place to stop by so she can remember her mother every time she steps into the village to bring guidance to those who are lost. In the continued efforts to bring peace and a safe space to be to refugees of Japan in the Nata Valley continues for years until her passing. Thanks for being a part of this series. I've enjoyed working on this, and I'm glad to have had you here. Take care until the next time.